theyeshiva.net.
We are up to Daf Tes Zayin Amud Aleph in Masechta Megillah, and the line begins. Sheheviu bebahala. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 13 lines from the bottom. Megillah Tes Zayin Amud Aleph. The line begins, Sheheviuhu bebahala. Let's remember, it's the second day of Pesach. It's Tes Zayin Nissan, right? And Mordechai was taken around the streets of Shushan. He goes back to the gate to fast, and Haman goes home. He's mourning. He's covered in schmutz and filth. He's so upset. The Chachamim and his wife tell him, Mordechai will defeat you if he's Mizerah HaYehudim from the Shevet of Yehuda, Binyamin, Ephraim, and Menashe. And then Vayavhilu, they rush to bring Haman, and there's Bahala, he's afraid, he's fearful because of the situation in which he's brought to the king. He's just in all of this panic and hysteria and difficult situation, and he's schlepped to the king. And we know what happens now. What happens now is there is the second party that Esther arranged, which is the second day of Pesach, which, by the way, is brought in halacha. I mentioned this, that on the second day of Pesach, there's a minig. It's brought by many poskim to eat something extra in the meal, second day of Pesach in the afternoon, as a commemoration for the party, for the second party that Esther made, during which Haman was hung, and ultimately it led to the salvation of the Jewish people. So after Haman is brought to the party, that's the end of chapter 6 of the Megillah, chapter 7 begins. At this second party, Tes Zayin Nissan, the king asks Esther what she wants. Again, he offers her Ad Chatzia Malchus. And that's when Esther says the famous words to Achashverosh, the key words, and her words are, she says, find favor in your eyes, Tinosen li nafshi b'sheilasi v'ami b'bakashasi. I'm going to ask for my soul, and I'm going to ask for my people. I'm going to ask for my soul. I don't want to get killed on the 13th day of Adar. And I'm going to ask for my people. I don't want my people to get killed on Yud Gimel Adar. And then she adds, and that's what the Gemarah is going to analyze now, and I'm quoting the Pasuk, Megillah Esther, Perek Zayin, Pasuk Dalet, Ki nimkarnu ani va'ami lahashmid la'areg u'la'abed. Me and my nation were sold to be exterminated, to be killed, to be lost. If we would have been sold as slaves and as maidservants, I would have remained silent. Why? Ki ein hatzor shoive benezek hamelech. What's ein hatzor shoive benezek hamelech? Yeah. So Rashi says that what Esther was saying is that Haman couldn't care less about the damage of the king. If he cared about you, he should have sold the Jewish people. He should have told you, sell them as slaves and take the money. Or keep them alive and let them be your slaves. They and their descendants should work for the king. But he did not do that. Thank you. But it's a very interesting words. Ki einat sar shoive benezek hamelech. That's when Achashverosh asks Esther, who is this man? Who are you talking about? Who is this person who sold you and your nation? Look, the Gemarah, Tinosen li nafshi b'sheilasi v'ami b'bakashasi ki nimkarnu ani v'ami v'gomer ki einat sar shoive benezek hamelech. What does this mean? Amra lo, she said, tsar zeh. This tsar, Haman is called the tsar. Tsar means somebody who's an oppressor, somebody who's a killer, somebody who, the word tsar, like the word tsar, means narrow, tsar ayin is stingy, tsara means a problem, a distress, a calamity. Tsoyer HaYehudim, the one who's tsoyer, he oppresses Jews, he distresses Jews. Macht Yidden eng. Tsar also means like a derech tsara, a very narrow strait. So tsar is Haman. She doesn't say his name yet. But this tsar, this oppressor, this low-life oppressor, Einoi shoive benezek shel melech. He couldn't care less
about the nezek of the melech. It's an expression which he says, Ein hatzar shoiva. What's shoiva? Rashi says, shoiva choishesh. Shoiva means, Ein hatzar, this oppressor, shoiva. He couldn't care less. It's not worth anything for him. It could be it's associated with the word shava. It's not, he doesn't care for it. So this tsar, Einer shoiva benezek shal melech. Ikne ba bevashti v'katla. He was jealous of Vashti, and he killed her. He told you to kill her. The Gemarah said earlier on Daf Yud Beis that Memuchan, the minister who was consulted, and he advised the king to get rid of his wife Vashti. This Memuchan was Haman. It was one of his nicknames. Vayomer Memuchan. So he says, look at this man. He couldn't care less about you. He couldn't care less about your nezek. Couldn't care less about your damage. He became jealous of Vashti. She was too royal. She had too much power. So what did he do? Katla, he got her killed. And now he's jealous of me. Now I stand in between him and the king, and he wants to kill me. Look at this pattern. He needs full power. He needs full control. He cannot have anybody who's more powerful than him. He got jealous of Vashti, and now he's jealous of me. He couldn't care less about the Nezek HaMelech. Where do you see he wanted to kill her? She started off, Tinosan li nafshi b'sheilasi. I want to rescue my soul. I want to rescue my soul. So Esther was saying, it's not just, I'm a Jew, so he's going to kill me. It's much more than that. He wants to make sure I'm dead because I'm getting in between him and the king. He couldn't care less about the Nezek HaMelech. At least if he would have sold us as avodim or shvacha, ismeila. What is Esther doing here? What is the Gemarah saying? What is Esther doing here? She's bringing out from Achashverosh his worst fears, his worst paranoia. Now suddenly this Haman, the great hero of the Persian Empire, the closest man to Achashverosh, is turned into the greatest villain who couldn't care less about Achashverosh and has been using the king all the years for his own power. This was Esther's brilliance at this moment of why she has them both at this party. Back to the Gemarah earlier, why she invited Haman to the party. What happens next? The king Achashverosh says, Vayomer le'Esther Amalka, and he tells Esther, let's finish the pasuk, Mi hu zeh, ve'ezahu, Hashem la'oili boi la'asais kain. Mi hu zeh, who is this? Ve'ezahu. And what, who? And again, who is this? It's a very interesting expression. Mi hu zeh. That is thus, who is it? Ve'ezahu. And who is this he? Who is this and who is this he? Hashem Eloi li b'lasaskein, who had the audacity that his heart was so audacious that he has the chutzpah to do this. Mi hu zeh ve'ezahu. So what does Esther answer? Ish tsar v'oyev Haman hara hazeh. Okay. So the Gemarah, Vayomer lama li. Why does it say Vayomer twice? Vayomer hamelech la'Achashverosh, Vayomer l'Esther Amalka. Just say Vayomer hamelech Achashverosh l'Esther Amalka. It's very, very strange. The king said, and he said to Esther. No, the king said to Esther. What's the Vayomer? Gewaldige question. Rashi writes in Megillah, wherever it says Vayomer twice, it's always for a medrash. What's the medrash? So Rashi quotes the Gemarah. Amar Rabbo b'tchila yidei torgemer given Amar le'mid beis shol kosin and miyad Vayomer l'Esther Amalka. In the beginning, Achashverosh communicated with Esther through a metorgeman. What do we mean through a metorgeman? Through a shliach, through a messenger. Because it's true, when Achashverosh was with Esther privately, of course he spoke to her directly. But it means in front of other people, the system of kings was that they would communicate to everybody, even in this case to the queen, through a messenger. This is like the kavod of the Malchus. The Melech had a person, and he was the meturgum, and he was the middleman to bring over the messages. We're not talking about when Achashverosh and Esther were private. Obviously, there was nobody in the room there to be able to be the meturgum. But this is talking about in public. Here, there was somebody else here. There was Haman, and probably there were bodyguards, and there were whatever was there was Charvaina. We see later in the story. So first, he spoke to her through a shliach. That's why it says Vayomer hamelech Achashverosh. Because it was not Vayomer la Esther. He didn't speak to Esther. He spoke to a shliach, not to Esther. The shliach gave it over to Esther. Kivan Damali, when she told him, I come from Shaul HaMelech, I'm from the descendants of Shaul, because basically she reveals the truth that what? That she's a Jew and she comes from Shaul. That Goy Sabach adds 3 words based on the version of the Gemarah in Ein Yaakov. Bas Melochem Ano. I'm a daughter of kings. I come from Shaul Ish Yemini. Mordechai and Esther came from Shevet Binyamin, and Esther was a descendant of Shaul HaMelech, who, by the way, was commanded to wipe out Amalek, and he did not listen. The Al-Shich says that's why Mordechai said, Va'atu beisa vichtoi vedi, that if you don't go into the king to plead, you and your father's home will perish, because your father needs a tikkun for not wiping out Agag Melech Amalek. That's how we have Haman now. So now she reveals that she comes from the house of Shaul. Miyad vayomel Esther Hamalka. Now finally, immediately, he speaks to Esther Hamalka directly, because he finds out she is a Bas Melochem. Rashi says in the Megillah, quoting this Gemarah, that the Medrash says in the beginning he spoke to a shliach. Now he found out she's from a royal family. Dibri mohu ba'atzmai. He spoke to her directly. Here Rashi doesn't explain this, but in the Megillah Esther, Rashi explains it. What happens next? So Vayomer HaMelech HaChashverosh means he spoke to who? To a shliach. But then he finds out who she is, because she said, they're trying to kill me because I'm Jewish. So now suddenly, for the first time in public, he could speak directly to Esther, because she is a Bas Melochem. She's a daughter of kings. Stam, when I was a yeshiva bacher, so it was once Purim, so one of my Rosh Yeshivas, Purim with Fabring a little bit. So after the Megillah, we heard the Megillah in Shul. So he says, I want to tell you my pshat vayomer vayomer. He said, I want to tell you my own pshat vayomer vayomer. And he said something interesting, insightful. He says, he's a Yid, he's a briske cup, a lomdische cup. So he said, as a word. He said, there's 2 reasons why people speak. Sometimes you speak because you want to tell somebody something, so you say something. Sometimes you're really not interested, but you have to say something. You're pushed to the wall, you have to say something. You have to say something, so you figure out something to say. You're not really interested in saying this, but you have to say something. So you figure out the right thing to say. Vayomer HaMelech HaChashverosh. Achashverosh had to say something. The queen says that somebody wants to murder me. Yeah. Somebody wants to murder me. Me and my nation, we're Jewish. I'm Jewish. Somebody wants to kill me. We know how Achashverosh hated the Jews. The Gemarah says before Daf Yudalet, Bala Telem, Bala Chritz. Haman was the owner of the ditch and Achashverosh was the owner of the mount. But somebody, your queen comes and says, they want to kill my whole nation. What, are you going to be quiet? So Vayomer HaMelech HaChashverosh, he had to say something. But he wasn't interested. Now the question is, what are you going to say? So Vayomer Esther Hamalka, he said what he's going to say. Okay, this is a Purim Vertel. Esther answered, Ish tsar v'oyev Haman hara hazeh. Who is this man? He's a tsar and a oyev. He's a oppressor. He's an enemy. Haman, the evil Haman. What? She could have just said Haman hara hazeh. He asked, Mi uzev ve'ezehu, who wanted to do this? Say Haman hara hazeh. What do you have to give all the titulim, all the adjectives? Amar Rebbe Lazar melamed shoysa machva klape Achashverosh. Fascinating interpretation. She actually started to point towards Achashverosh. When she said Ish tsar v'oyev, she was not talking about Haman. She was talking about Achashverosh. Ish tsar v'oyev is Achashverosh. You're them. You're the oppressor. You're the enemy. And then there's Haman hara hazeh. That's why it doesn't just say Haman hara hazeh, because this is something else. Machva klape Achashverosh. She started to point towards Achashverosh. That's what she was planning to say. Uba malach v'sata yada klape Haman. And an angel comes and he slaps her hand. He moves her hand away, sways her hand to go towards Haman. Rashi says, "Miribui," from the, I'll read Agai Sabach. "Miribui davar zeh taloymet shahayel loymar Haman hara hazeh ela shayseroyt taloymet al Achashverosh itz tsar v'oyev al Haman hara hazeh." She wanted it was 2 titles here. Tsar v'oyev was for the king, and Haman hara hazeh was for Haman. That's why the sentence is so wordy. Now this is very, very strange. What's pshat? Why would she want to point to Achashverosh? This doesn't make sense. She's trying to persuade Achashverosh to cancel the decree. She wants to get rid of Haman. She wants to convince the king to cancel the decree. So why is she calling him Ish Tsar V'Oyev? This is not a very good diplomatic skill. You go into somebody and you say, you're the enemy, you're the Tzorei HaYehudim, you're the oppressor. What are you trying to do? And the Malach comes and has to push away your hand. What's pshat? And this is how the Chazal understood why it says Ish Tsar V'Oyev. This is the only explanation that Belazar could give. There's a sefer called Medrash Talpiyos. It was authored by a man named Rabbi Eliyahu Akaya, and he also wrote a very famous sefer called Shevet Musar. Shevet Musar. So in Medrash Talpiyos, the alphabet goes in the alphabet. Under Achashverosh, he says a line. He says, Ha'amiti oiser regilusai. Lidvar ha'emes, uregilusa la'emes garmala shay samach v'klape Achashverosh shay yoser tsar v'oyev mehaman. Which means, truth follows the path of truth. A person who's truthful always says the truth and speaks truth. Esther was just full of truth. So instinctively, it wasn't consciously that she wanted to accuse Achashverosh. But because the truth is that Achashverosh was a much greater, Achashverosh in some ways hated the Jews more than Haman. At least according to some opinions, but certainly he despised the Jews, so the truth just came out. Yeah. The Ramban says, why did Moshe break the luchas? He says he saw what happened. Just like it says by Moshe Rabbeinu, why did he kill the Egyptian? You see a Jew being beaten to death. He couldn't stop himself. So he's saying, you're right. Intellectually, it didn't make sense. Intellectually, it's not what Esther should do. But it just came out. She was so emotional. She told Achashverosh the truth. And you needed a special guardian angel to throw away her hand. Satar es yada, to slap her hand. That it actually shouldn't go this way. It should go this way. So as she picked it up, it gets moved. It gets moved to Haman. I saw another vart from Reb Reuven Margolius. Reb Reuven Margolius was a very, very big Talmud Chacham. He passed away, I think, around 1970 in Eretz Yisrael. And he wrote lots and lots and lots of Svarim. He was a big, big gon. So I saw Reb Reuven Margolius, a very interesting interpretation. He was a famous sefer Margolius Hayam, a sefer Nitzutze Or. So he says this in Nitzutze Or. So he says what the Gemarah means as follows. That when Oisamach v'klape Achashverosh doesn't mean just she was pointing to Achashverosh that he's the evil one. That's not what it means. It means she was pointing to Achashverosh that Haman wants to kill him as much as he wants to kill her. Ish Tsar V'Oyev is, he's Tsar to me. He wants to kill me as a Jew. But he's Oyev to you. He couldn't care less about you either. He would like to get rid of you. The guy doesn't care about you. Like the Gemarah says earlier, he got rid of Vashti because he was jealous of her, and wants to get rid of me. So what Esther meant, Mach v'klape Achashverosh, was she was pointing towards Achashverosh. This guy doesn't only want to kill me. Ish Tsar V'Oyev, he's an enemy to you. Mach v'klape Achashverosh, he wants to kill you, this Haman Araza. Now what's the problem? The problem is that because of her emotions, her israkshus, she forgot the rule in the palace. The rule in the palace is, the Gemarah says in Masechta Chagiga Daf Hey and Masechta Psachim Daf Nun Zayin, that it's disrespectful to the king to show any hand gestures. To point to the king like this was considered disrespectful to the point that the ancient kings could kill somebody for this. They were dictators, they were tyrants. But the Gemarah says, "Man de machve b'moche kame malka." You just make faces, facial expressions, or you make with your hand azoy. That's in Chagig. It's facial expressions, or with hand signs, like sign language. In Psachim, he made with his hand azoy, chopped off his hand. Psachim daf nun zayin. The ancient kings were horrible. This was a horrible thing. It's disrespectful. You stand be'ema, be'yira, be'resas, be'ziyah with complete awe. To the Gemarah says that there's a medrash in Bamidbar Rabbah, Perek Beis, Rabbi Margolius sees that if somebody points to the king, towards the face of the king, he could get executed for it. So when Esther, from emotions, went like this, he wants to kill you. This could have been very dangerous for her. This was a violation of the laws of the palace, and even if Achashverosh wouldn't have done anything to her, but certainly this would have enraged him. So Minash Shamayim, they pushed away her hand. That's how the Rabbi Margolius teaches the Gemarah a little more balabatish. There's another vart that I once saw. Where did the Gemarah get this idea from? Just because it's Ish Tsar V'Oyev, it means she was pointing to Achashverosh. What's happens? Maybe she was just giving more words about Haman. Like, why does Rabbi Elazar have to say this? So he said the Gemarah was actually reading the text. Achashverosh said to her, Mi huzeh ve'ezahu, right, what's the lashon? Mi huzeh ve'ezahu, Hashem Eloi liboy, lasais kain. What's the mi huzeh ve'ezahu? Mi huzeh? Mi huzeh ve'ezahu. So I told you, mi huzeh means who's zeh. Ve'ezahu is, and who's who. In English, there's who's who, right? Ve'ezahu and who's who. Mi huzeh ve'ezahu. It's redundant. Zog mi huzeh, Hashem Eloi liboy, lasais kain. Mi huzeh ve'ezahu. So pshat is azay. There's a famous halacha called Moide B'Miktzas. Moide B'Miktzas means, if I come to you and I say, you owe me $10,000, and you say, I only owe you $5,000, the other $5,000 I don't owe you, Chayev Shvua Min HaTorah. You're obligated to swear in Bezdin Min HaTorah that you paid, that you owe, that $5,000 that you don't owe me, you paid it, or you never borrowed it from me. And this is a Shvua Min HaTorah, biblical Shvua. And the Gemarah learns it out from Parshas Mishpat and Perek Chav Beis. The lashon is, when there's a dispute between two people, Asher yoymar ki hu zeh. Asher yoymar ki hu zeh. Parshas Mishpat and Perek Chav Beis pasuk ches. So when he says that ki hu zeh, you take him to Bezdin and you make him swear. So it's explained. Where did they learn it from? Asher yoymar ki hu zeh. Zeh is something that's revealed. Who is something that's concealed. Right? Zeh is second. Zeh is right here. This Marabetz boy v'oyma zeh. The Gemarah says at the end of Tainus, Marabetz boy v'oyma zeh. Hine elekenu zeh. Zeh keli. You could point. Zeh. It's here. Who? When you say he, he's away. It's third person. It's not here. It's concealed. Zeh is nigla, and who is nister. So asher yoymar ki hu zeh is there's a zeh and there's a he. There's a who. There's Haidah and there's Kfira. Part of it, I'm Maida. This is real money. And part of it, I'm completely denying. So part of it is completely concealed. I don't agree. And part of it, I say, yeah, this is true. So he says, Achashverosh hated the Jews more than Haman. The Chazal tell us. But there was a big difference. Achashverosh hated them secretly. Haman hated them in a revealed way. So Achashverosh says, Miu zeh ve'ezahu. There's a zeh and there's a hu. There's somebody who says all day he hates Jews, and there's somebody who doesn't hate Jews, but deep down he hates Jews, and it's expressed in clandestine ways. So Haman said, Haman hara hazeh. Haman is the zeh. But there's a hu. And the hu, that's you. Ish tsar v'oyev, that's the hu. That's the miu zeh ve'ezahu. But the last moment, the Malach pushed her away and things worked out, even though Esther could not hold back from saying the truth on her own. What happens next? Esther now accuses Haman. So it says Haman is afraid. Haman nivas, he's afraid, and the king is angry. So Hamelech Kamba Chamosim Mishtei Ayayin, and is angry, he gets up from the feast and he goes to the garden. And Haman stands up to beg for his life from Esther Hamalka because he realized how angry the king is. And then we know the next scene, the king comes back from the garden to the home where the party of wine was, and Haman is falling on the bed where Esther is. And that's when he says, Hagam lichbaish Hamalka imi baboyis. Are you going to conquer the queen inside my house? And Pnei Haman chafu, the face of Haman falls. Zog the Gemarah, Hamelech kam b'chamasay memishtei ayayin el ginas abisam. The king gets up in his anger. From the Mishtei Hayayin, he gets up from the party and he goes to the garden. And then the pasuk continues, the next pasuk, this is Megillah's Esther Perek Zayin, that V'hamelech shav Meginas Habison. The Melech comes back from the garden, back to the Mishtei Hayayin. He leaves the base Mishtei to go to the Gin, and he comes back. So the Gemarah Makish Sheva Lekema. Its obvious that the pasuk compares returning to getting up. In other words, the Megillah uses the same language of leaving to the garden to coming back from the garden. Makish Sheva Lekema. The return is similar to the going. Makima b'chema, just like when he stood up. It says V'hamelech kam b'mishtei hayai. He stood up from the party to leave. It says b'chamasa, he was anger. Af shiva b'chema. He also came back with tremendous anger. Where's the Gemarah learning this from? So the Marsha explains that there are there's extra words here. It says Hamelech kam b'chamasa b'mishtei hayai al ginas habis. The king was angry. He stood up from the party and he went to the garden. Okay, very good. The next pasuk says Hamelech shav miginas habisin al beis mishtei hayayin. Could have just said Hamelech shav. The king returned. We know where he was. He was in the garden and he came back to where he was before, which was by the party. But he repeats exactly the same words. Hamelech kam b'chamasai, from the mishtei hayayin to the ginas habisin, and then Hamelech shav from ginas habisin to beis mishtei hayayin. Apparently, mamish superfluous. Exactly the same words all over again. Even if you want to tell me where he came back from, you want to tell me he didn't go bowling in the middle, he didn't go for pizza, he didn't go for Malava Malka in the middle, he didn't go for a Pesach Seder in the middle, for a Chalamayah trip, so on. So say Hamelech shav meginas habisa el beis mishtei hayayin. He returned. Returning is, you say somebody was in the middle of the meal, he left the house, he went to the garden, right? He went to the porch to have a cigarette, or to drink, or to speak to somebody, or to take a phone call, and he came back. It says he came back el beis mishtei hayayin. So from here the Gemarah learns that the Megillah is trying to say that the same state of Kima was the state of Sheva. Just like he got up, it says b'chamasoi. When he returned, it doesn't say b'chamasoi, but it was also b'chamasoi. He was tremendously angry, and that explains why it says again miginas habison. He left miginas habison, and he went back al beis mishtei hayayin. Again, it could have just said Hamelech shav. Or it could have said Hamelech shav meginas habison. Or it could have said Hamelech shav el mishtei hayayin. We know he was in ginas habison. He's trying to say that no, just like he left, he came back, and he's trying to say something else. Something happened in the garden. Something happened in the garden that made him angry. That's why it doesn't just say he returned, or he returned to the party. He returned from the garden to the party. And how did he return? The same way like he left, with anger, because something happened in the garden. What happened? The azal va'ashkach l'malachi asharis, the id moleke gavre v'akri leilane de bustani. When he went to the garden, he found angels which appeared as people, and they were uprooting the trees of the bustani. Bustani is the garden. For Amarlu, and he said, Mayav daichel, what are you doing? Why are you uprooting my trees? V'amrulei, they told him, the fakdina and Haman, because Haman told us to. Haman came to the garden. Haman told us to go to the garden, uproot your trees. Ooh, now I understand he's angry. Haman is completely taking over my life. Now, how are you supposed to understand this Gemarah? What does this mean? Does this mean literally there were angels who appeared like people who were uprooting the trees? Does it mean metaphorically, symbolically, that when Achashverosh was in the garden, he went to the garden to relax? But in the garden, he was just enraged deeper and deeper, realizing and having this conversation inside his head, perhaps inside his head, right? Angels that appeared like people, either physically or metaphorically inside his head, and telling him that all of his trees of his garden are being uprooted because of Haman's commandment. You know how people's brains work. Asalabese. So this man is now really angry, comes back home. What happens now? The Megillah says, V'Haman noifel ala mitash Esther ala. Haman is falling on the bed where Esther is. He's falling on the bed. Zog the Gemarah, noifel, nafal mebayale. What's noifel? What, he was falling right now? Nafal, he fell on the bed. Mamish, when he walked in, he was falling. I mean, Achashverosh was in the garden for some time. So l'chayda, it says earlier that Haman stood up to beg Esther. She said, V'Haman nafal, he fell on the bed to beg. Haman was trying to stand up. A malach came and threw her on her, so that the king would obviously be suspicious. That's why it says neufel, because every moment he was falling again. In other words, again, when we say malach here, I just want to explain malach. What does a malach mean? A malach means there's a force in you, an angel. There may be a force in you that you may not even be conscious of. So we have a malach, malachi asharis, guardian angels. You do a mitzvah, it creates a malach, it creates an energy. There's an energy that the Rebbeinu Shalom orchestrated that was pushing Haman down on the bed despite his will. He's trying to get up every moment. But neufel, he keeps on falling and falling. There's something in him that's not allowing him to do the normal thing, which is get up. So that's the pshat. So b'meila, what happens now? So Achashverosh sees this, and when he sees this Amar, he says, "Vai mi beisa, vai mi bara." Woe unto me what's happening in the house, and woe unto me what's happening on the outside. In the house, Haman is trying to take the queen, and he's trying to violate the queen. And on the outside, what's happening? The messengers of Haman are uprooting my trees. You're going to conquer the queen with me in the house. Obviously, we see from these words, yeah. Are you going to also? Gam also means also. What's the also? In other words, and besides what you're doing to me outside, you also want to conquer inside. That's what he's saying, the Hagam. So he's upset about two things. He's upset about the chutz, and he's upset about the pnim. And the bias is the gam, in addition to what happened outside. And the Gemarah says, vai. He said vai, because vayomer, when he says vayomer, the Marsha says it's like vai omar. He said vai. Vayomer is vai omar. He said, woe unto what's happening on the inside, what's happening on the outside. The Sifzei Chachamim says that the Malachim were not lying when they said that Haman is trying to uproot the trees. They were saying the truth, because Haman wanted that the trees, the Jewish people, are called trees. Ki ha'adam eitz hasada. The trees hold up the world. The trees give us fruits. The trees give us oxygen. The trees are responsible for the existence of the world. So therefore, they were saying Haman is trying to uproot the trees. And this is the voice that he heard in the garden, that Haman really is here to uproot the Malucha by uprooting the Jewish people. What happens next? Vayomer Charvoina. Charvoina speaks up. Charvoina is one of the servants of the king, and he famously says, we have the tree that Mordechai put up in order to hang Haman, that Haman put up in order to hang Mordechai. It's standing in the house of Haman, and this is where he wanted to execute Mordechai, the man who spoke well about the king. So the Gemarah, Vayomer Charvoina said, the king said, Telu alav, hang Haman on this tree. This is Megillah's Esther, chapter 8. Charvoina too was no tzaddik. Charvoina too wanted to execute Mordechai, and he wanted Mordechai on the tree. That's why he knew about it. How did Charvoina know where the tree is? How did he know the height of the tree? How did he know the purpose of the tree? The answer is, he was ba'isa eitza. He was part of the scheme. The boat, he saw that the original scheme of Haman was not fulfilled. Remember, in the morning, Haman came to ask Achashverosh to hang Mordechai, but that didn't happen. Instead, Haman had to take Mordechai around the streets of Shushan. Miyad barach, Charvoina immediately escaped Haman, and he abandoned his loyalty to Haman, and now he became an informer to the king. That's what happens. This is an illustration of what the Pasuk says in Iyov, Perek Chav Zayin, Vayashlech alav, v'lo yachmal miyadoi baroyach yivrach. Basically, Hashem hurls bad fate on the wicked person, and he doesn't have compassion on him. What happens? All of his friends run away. Miyadoi baroyach yivrach, from his hand he runs away, meaning all those who are loyal. Rashi says, B'nei sayatoi v'chaveirav barchim miyadoi. All of the people who help him and all of his friends run away. It's loyalty that is conditional. As long as you're on the top of the world, I'm with you. The moment I see you're on the bad side, I'm gone. Like we learned, the Gemarah says earlier that When Haman came home, so first the Gemarah speaks, the Pasuk calls the people there his friends, and then the Chachamim. So one of the interpretations is when Haman is on the top of the world, he has a lot of friends. When he's in the abyss, he doesn't have friends, he has Chachamim, he has consultants. So here's the Gemarah is saying, Charvoina runs away from Haman and he says, this is not the place to invest in, we need new stocks. And suddenly he becomes a Yoyitz v'Achashverosh and he says, Mordechai is a good man and this Haman is trying to hang him. There's always the charvoinas in every courtyard. We know there's other midrashim about charvoina, there's different interpretations. We say in Shoshanas Yaakov, V'gam charvoina zachal atov, Rasha aher, Rasha ahin, L'poil mamash, he got Haman executed. So we always thank charvoina zachal atov. But according to this Gemarah, there's always the charvoinas in shtetl. The charvoinas in shtetl, we call them consultants, meaning they don't have real loyalty. When Haman is on the top, they go to Haman. Mordechai should be killed. Mordechai should be killed. The moment they see that the king changed his position, so now they're suddenly friends of Mordechai, friends of the king. These are the charvoinas in life who at a given moment will run away from their previous loyalties. So what happens now? They hang Haman on the tree that he prepared for Mordechai. V'chamas hamelech shachacha. And the wrath of the king calms down. This is the end of chapter 7 of the Megillah. Frag the Gemarah shtei shchichis halal ulama. Why does it say shachacha with the two chafs? Shachacha. It could have said kishoich chamas hamelech Achashverosh in chapter 2 of the Megillah when the anger calmed down. And over there's only one chaf. What we have by the Mabel, right, in Parshas Noach. Vayashoiku hamoyim. The water calmed down from its rage during the flood. Vayashoiku keshoich. Why does it say here shachacha? V'chamas hamelech shacha. Why two? Why shtei shchichas? So the Gemarah achas shel malko shel olam v'achas shel Achashverosh. One is the wrath of the king of the world, and one is the wrath of Achashverosh. What does this mean? What is the Gemarah saying? Achas shel malka shel achas shel Achashverosh. The Gemarah is basically bringing out what Mordechai and Esther understood, that the Gemarah doesn't happen on earth if it didn't happen in heaven. No Gemarah can happen on earth against the Jewish people if it didn't happen in heaven. Like the Gemarah said before, Balayla hu nadada shnas hamelech, shnas malkoi shel olam. The king can only be asleep here because the king up there is asleep. Because there was shnas hamelech, Malka Shalom, therefore the Gemarah can happen. So he says, Shachacha is the first anger that had to be relaxed was Malka Shalom, the king's anger, the king of the world. And then automatically it evolved down here that the wrath of Achashverosh also calmed down. Va'amrila, others say, Achas shel Esther v'achas shel Vashti. It's referring to Achashverosh. The wrath about Vashti and the wrath about Esther both had to calm down. He was still angry what Haman did to Vashti. And he was angry what Haman did to Esther. Rashi says, Achas shel Esther, shel Yakos Achashverosh al masha'asa Haman lehester. What Haman now tried to do to Esther, lichbash es hamalkei mi babayis, plus what he did to Vashti. He gave him the advice to kill Vashti. He was angry on both, and that's shachacha, both angers. Okay, Chevra, we're going to stop here, and Be'ezer Hashem, we're going to continue our shir tomorrow, Friday morning. And I wish everybody a beautiful, healthy, wonderful day. I want to invite all of the children, your grandchildren, to join us today, Thursday, Rosh Chodesh Nissan, March 26 at 4 p.m. on the yeshiva.net for a special children's program. In the meantime, stay healthy. My love and blessings. A guten Chodesh, a gesunte Chodesh, a freiliche Chodesh, a lichtige Chodesh, a lustigen Chodesh, benissen nigalu, benissen asidin le'goyel, b'mheira b'yameinu. Have an amazing day. And stay healthy and stay home. We are up to Masechta Megillah, Daf Tezayin Amud Aleph, all the way on the bottom. The second to the last line, Daf Tezayin Amud Aleph. I want to welcome all those who are joining us here virtually. Please open up a Masechta Megillah, Tezayin Amud Aleph, so you could follow with us inside. We are literally holding the last line, the second to the last line. Now, after discussing the great and extraordinary defeat of Haman on the second day of Pesach, Tezayin Nissan, he's hung at the second party of Esther, and at last the wrath of the king is quieted down. The king relaxes. The Gemarah now changes the subject and goes to a different story. And the story is where Yosef HaTzadik in Parshas Vayikra reveals himself to his brothers. We'll soon see how the story connects here. And he tells them, Ani Yosef, ha'od avichai, is my father still alive? And he would send them back to Eretz Canaan to bring back Yaakov and the whole family, sends them with wagons and with food and grain. He wants them to relocate. And the pasuk says, L'kulam Nissan leish chalifois smolos, ulevinyamin, as the Gemarah says, ulevinyamin Nissan chamesh chalifois. The exact pasuk is, to each of the brothers, Yosef gave an exchange of clothes, of shirts. Binyamin, he gave shloish meyes kesef v'chamesh chalifois smolos. And also 5. I just want to take out a chumash. This is in Parshas Vayikra. So the exact lashon is, it's Parshas Vayikra. It should be Perik Memches. He sends them as follows. He says, L'kulam, Yosef sends them home with wagons. He gives them food. He says to each of them he gave changes of clothing. Binyamin, he gave 300 pieces of silver and 5 changes of clothing. Chamesh chalifois smolos. Each one got changing of clothes, but he got 5. And then it says, his father, he sent 10 donkeys filled with the goodness, the plenty of Egypt, and 10 female donkeys with grain and food and bread. Says the Gemarah, Efsher dover shenitztayer by oisay tzadik, yikashel boy. A very fascinating question. Is it possible that that very thing which caused so much pain to the tzaddik, he should himself stumble by this? What's the question? Take a look in Rashi, the last Rashi on Tezayin Amar Aleph. Davar shenitztayer be'oisei tzadik le'eved nimkar Yosef aydei kinas echa. Yosef was sold as a slave due to the jealousy of his brothers. So because of the jealousy of his brothers, who envied him because of how his father treated him and gave him a special tunic, coat, ksainas pasim, he suffered so much agony. Is it possible that something that caused him so much pain, he himself should stumble through it? Meaning, he's repeating the same mistake. He's giving his brother Binyamin much more clothes than the other brothers. What is that doing? It's repeating the story. This doesn't make sense. Something that caused him so much tsar, so much agony, usually in such a case, you would think he would run far away from it. He wouldn't want to even be associated with such a type of behavior. And yet, right here, right now, what does he do? He sets Binyamin apart from the brothers. He treats him differently. He gives him much more than he gives the other brothers. Yikashel boy. The Amar Rabbi bar Mechasya, Amar Reb Chama bar Gurya, Amar Rabbi, the son of Mechasya, said in the name of Reb Chama, the son of Gurya, who said in the name of Rav, B'shel Mishkal Shnei Shloyim Milas, Shahoyisef Yaakov li Yosef, Mishar Echav Nizgal Galadavar v'Yordu Aviseinu l'Mitzrayim. Because of something that weighed 2 Shloyim of fine wool, meaning because of the tunic, Yaakov Avinu has woven, he made for Yosef, his beloved son, a special tunic or a special coat or a special shirt called ksainas pasim, very, very fine wool, milas is fine wool. And because of this coat, which weighed 2 Shloyim, Shloyim was a currency, it was a coin made of silver, a particular weight of silver, which was a very well-known currency. And in the time of the Chazal, they used these coins also as a weight measurement. Like you would have a scale, and let's say you had to give somebody a certain weight of a product, of a certain food or merchandise, you would weigh it against this coin, like this seller, because you knew this seller weighed this amount of silver, 7 grams of silver, 14 grams of silver, whatever it was. The weight of a selah is considered a small weight, between 7 and 14 grams of silver. That's the weight of it. So the Gemarah is saying, because of how much does a shirt weigh? How much does a coat weigh? So because of fine wool with the weight of 2 slayim, which Yaakov added for Yosef by giving him this tunic of fine wool, as the Torah says in Parshas Vayikra. Now, Rashi says that the number of Shnei Slayim is not necessarily meticulous. How did the Gemarah know that the coat weighed 2 slayim? What, they had the coat and they put it on the scale? So Rashi says in Masechta Shabbos that it's just an expression. In other words, something that weighed so little caused the entire transformation of Jewish history. That's the point. Something that was so little, a little shirt that weighed 2 slayim, it's not a lot, not a heavy weight. Because of this, the Jewish people relocated to Egypt. That's the point. Besides, as the Marsha says, it's hard to say that a coat of fine wool was Shnei Slayim, was probably more. But in any case, the Mefarshim believe that Shnei Slayim is just an example. It's more metaphoric than accurate. So because of this fine wool that Yaakov gave to Yosef, what happens? It evolves. Nisgalgel hadover, it evolves. Nisgalgel means things rolled. And ultimately, all of our forefathers came down to Egypt. If this is the situation, how can Yosef repeat this same thing and do it again with Binyamin? Why would he treat Binyamin differently than the other brothers? Now the Marsha says that really you can't compare it, because Binyamin was Yosef's full brother. All the other brothers were only half brothers. They had the same father but not the same mother. Binyamin was the only brother who had the same mother. Right? The other brothers were only brothers from the father. So why would they be jealous of Binyamin? This is like his brother. You treat your whole brother differently. It's not like Yaakov treating Yosef differently because Yaakov was all their father. Yaakov was the father of all of them, so they got jealous. But here, Binyamin did have a special kinship. You know, when I give something to my child or my brother versus somebody else who's only a half-brother, it somehow makes more sense. But the Marsha's point is, at this moment, Yosef was reconciling with his brothers. He told them not to be depressed. He told them not to be melancholy. He told them not to be furious, and he explained to them that even though they had all of these types of plans, God was the one who orchestrated this whole story so that he should be able to provide life. This was his objective. He went out of his way to show them that he's not going to take revenge. He does not hate them. He does not despise them. In this climate, it's difficult, even if there's justification, why he would differentiate Binyamin from all of the brothers and arouse their suspicion. Oh my God, he was the only one who didn't sell him, and this means he's upset at us, and this means he's not wholesome with us, and he may take revenge. That's the question that the Gemarah is asking. Of course, it's not mamish the same like Yosef being treated specially by Yaakov. Again, Binyamin is his whole brother, but still, it would seem difficult that Yosef, who should be so sensitive to what happened to him, should allow himself to do something that at least would have some similarity. So the Gemarah says, Amar Rav Binyamin bar Yafes. Rav Binyamin, the son of Yafes, said, Remez Ramazloi. Yosef gave a hint to Binyamin, Sha'asid ben lotzis mimenu, Sheyetzi milifnei hamelech b'chamisha levushay malchus. By giving Binyamin 5 changes of clothing, he was hinting to him that one day he's going to have a descendant. And this man is going to leave the presence of the king with 5 types of royal garments. And of course, this is Mordechai. Mordechai came from the tribe of Binyamin. Mordechai was a descendant of Binyamin. Shenemar, it says in Megillah Esther, Mordechai yotza. Milifnei hamelech, Mordechai went out from the king, belevush malchus, in a royal garment. And the Megillah points out 5 garments. Tcheles, v'chur, v'aterezov gdoila, v'sachrich butz, v'argaman. So the Mordechai is wearing, going out after the miracle of Purim. It says that Mordechai leaves Milifnei HaMelech. Let's translate it into English. And we say this loud. Mordechai left the king's presence clad in royal garments. And then we go through 5 types. Tcheles, turquoise, chur, white, a terezov gdoila, a large gold crown, tachrich butz, a robe of fine linen, and va'argaman, and purple. So these are the 5 garments. When Yosef gave Binyamin these chalifos smalos, it wasn't to set him apart from the brothers. Rather, it was remez ramaz lo, it was a message that one day there's going to be a Mordechai. Mordechai yatzim lefnei melech with chamesh levushim, with 5 garments. That's why I'm giving you now these 5 garments. A change of clothing of 5 garments. As usual, you can text your questions to 845-777-4747, 845-777-4747. You can text any question you want. Now, how are we to understand this? First of all, why is Yosef giving this remes to Binyamin? Why now? Like, okay, it's very interesting. Mordechai one day is going to go out with 5 garments. What's the connection to Yosef sending his brothers back to Egypt, back to Eretz Canaan, to bring them to Egypt? Why is he giving this remes now? How does it also solve the issue of jealousy? Let's say there was a hint. There was a hint that Mordechai is going to come out with 5 garments. How does that solve the jealousy issue? Okay, so one day in history, I'm going to have a descendant who's going to wear chamesh smalos. No, so give this speech to my brothers. So there's the famous interpretation of the Vilna Gaon. The Vilna Gaon answers that the 5 change of clothing that he gave Binyamin, in terms of worth, were equal to the 1 change of clothing that he gave to the brothers. So therefore, there was no reason to be jealous, because the 1 garment that he gave the brothers was equal in price to the 5 garments that he gave Binyamin. This is a famous interpretation of the Vilna Gaon, printed in his Sefer Shnois Eliyahu at the end of Seder Zeroyim, his commentary on Mishnayos and Seder Zeroyim. That's the answer that he gives. The problem with that, of course, is the Gemarah doesn't say that. So the Gemarah should have given a simple answer. The Gemarah should have said that there was no reason to be jealous because he gave him 5 because of Mordechai, but the price was the same. So the Vilna Gaon would answer, you're right. The Gemarah means to say he did not differentiate. The only reason he gave 5 was not to differentiate. It was the same price. So why did he give 5? Why didn't he give them all 1 if it was the same price? The answer is he gave them 5 cheaper ones and he gave them 1 expensive one. And the reason he did that was because he wanted to hint to him the story of Mordechai. That's the explanation of the Vilna Gaon, how to understand this Gemarah. I want to share another possible interpretation that I was reflecting on. I don't know if this is accurate or authentic. I didn't see it, but I want to present it as a possible interpretation and maybe one way of understanding this. There was a very profound message here. A very profound message. Remember, Mordechai was now appointed as the viceroy of the Persian Empire. Remember, Mordechai replaced Haman. When you read the Megillah, it says that after Haman was executed, what happens? Haman is executed at the end of chapter 9. At the end of chapter 7, in chapter 8, Achashverosh gives Esther the house of Haman. The king takes the ring of Haman and he gives it to Mordechai. Yeah. Esther places Mordechai in the position to run the house of Haman. And what happens afterwards? What happens afterwards is the king gives the Jewish people the right to defend themselves. And Mordechai then comes out from the king with all of these garments. And essentially what we see here is that Mordechai replaced Haman as the prime minister of the Persian Empire. Mishnah Lamelech, the second in command. And that's how the whole Megillah ends. The whole Megillah ends, Mordechai Yehudi, Mishnah Lamelech Achashverosh. He was the second in command to Achashverosh. Where do we have precedent for this? Where do we have precedent for a Jew a great Jew, a holy Jew, a saintly Jew, a Jew who grew up in the cradle of Judaism, becoming the prime minister of the most powerful empire of the time, the Persian Empire. Is there a precedent in history? And the answer, of course, is there a precedent for a Jew, not a Jewish king in the Jewish country? We're talking here in the Persian Empire, where a non-Jew rules the world, and yet a Jew is second in command. Do we have such a precedent? Of course. Where? Yosef and Parai. Yosef was that Mishnah Lamelech. Parai tells him, you will be Mishnah Lamelech. Parshas Miketz. Without your permission, nobody will lift an arm or a leg in the whole of Egypt. He is second in command. He says, I am Parai, Ani Parai, but you're right under me. You're the Mishnah Lamelech HaChashverosh. You are the viceroy. You're like the prime minister of Egypt. Basically, the position that Mordechai received in lieu of Haman. Mishnah Lamelech HaChashverosh. This is not a simple position. This is a person who is now ruling the world, but not as the Jewish leader on top. He's under a Gentile leader. This was Yosef's position in Egypt, and this was Mordechai's position in Shushan. And this type of mission requires special strength, because it's easier to be isolated. When you're living in a cocoon, when you're living as shepherds, isolated in your own little world, away from the urban cities and not involved in the hustling and bustling and stress and anxiety of running the economy of Egypt, you could remain connected to your heritage, to your faith, to your forefathers. In fact, it says in Sfarim, the Baal HaTanya writes, that's why the Avos and the Shvatim chose as a vocation to be shepherds. When the Shvatim came down to Mitzrayim, they sent a message they told Parai that throughout our entire life, we were shepherds, because shepherds live in commune with nature, and therefore they can experience a constant state of meditation, serenity, mindfulness, a relationship with God. You take your flock, you take your sheep or your goats or your animals, you take the herds out to pasture, and you're near water and near natural vegetation and grass and produce. It's just much more serene and tranquil environment. Yosef chose a very different path for himself. Yosef would descend into Egypt. First, he would run Potiphar's house. Then he would end up in jail. And then he would become the prime minister of the superpower of the time, and ultimately become the chief economist of Egypt, the most important official in Egypt under the Pharaoh, and basically begin a whole system saving Egypt and the world from famine. This is not an easy mission. This is not an easy job. Can a Jew really integrate the two worlds? This was a big debate between Yosef and his brothers. The brothers believed, this the Baal HaTanya writes, and the Chidush Harim writes it, and the Sfas Emes writes it, and in many Hasidic works, this is a very powerful theme, that Yosef believed. Rav Avram Yitzchak Kohen Cook has a whole beautiful essay on this. The first one I saw it is in the writings of the Baal HaTanya, but it's already intimated even earlier. There was a deep philosophical debate between Yosef and his brothers. The brothers felt that Judaism can only thrive in isolation. And that's our job. Our job is we have to be in commune with God, and the only way we can do that is if we're actually somewhat detached from mainstream society. Mainstream society is pagan, and it could be crass, and it can take you away from your God and your spiritual essence. Yosef believed that the ultimate role of the Jew is l'sakin olam b'malchus shin daled yud, to change the world. And elu v'elu divrei Elokim chaim. Throughout Jewish history, you see these two paths. There are those who believe that the Jewish people must thrive within their own confinement. And Yosef says, no, my job is to change the world. My hashgacha, the divine providence, wants me to go and change all of humanity, all of civilization, change the landscape of planet Earth. You already see it in his dreams. The jealousy of the brothers to Yosef was not just over a shirt. Let them go buy their own shirt. It wasn't just that they felt their father loved him more than them, and therefore they felt slighted, and that's why they wanted to kill him. That would be very strange to assume that brothers, even in not such a functional family, never mind the children of Yaakov, the Shvatim, Shiftei Yudkei, should be able to consider murdering their own brother or throwing him into a pit or selling him as a slave because the father gave him a shirt that weighed 2 sloyim. The Ksainas Pasim represented something to them. It represented that Yosef had a different mission. He had a different philosophy, he had a different perspective, which they felt was a danger for the Jewish people and for the Jewish world. And when Yaakov was showing him such favoritism, and Yaakov considered him the king, and all of them would bow down to him, they felt that if Yosef succeeds, there is no zecher, there's no future to the Jewish people. Of course, this was an error. They meant well, but this was a tragic error, because Yosef had a unique ability. What was his unique ability? His unique ability was the ability of synthesis, of integration. Yosef was the person who can go into the depraved culture of Egypt, dress like an Egyptian, speak as an Egyptian, run the whole economy of Egypt, serve as a prime minister under Parai, and yet, not only did it not deter him from his relationship with the divine, on the contrary, Yosef impacted his society, and Yosef maintained his clarity, his serenity, his relationship, his moral integrity, and his deep connection with his soul, with his father and grandfather of Yaakov and Yitzchak and Avram, his great-grandfather, and with God. And even in the house of Potiphar, where he's tempted, he does not surrender to temptation. Vayonas vayetze achutza, he remains loyal to his true soul. Yosef is the person who could reveal the presence of God and the presence of truth, even in the midst of Paro's palace. And this is the message Yosef is giving to Binyamin when he meets him. Just like my father gave me a ksainas pasam, I'm going to give you, for Mordechai, what my father has given me. Because what did the ksainas pasam represent? It was colorful. It was fine wool and it was colorful. It was a tunic that was multicolorful. What's the point? Yaakov was teaching Yosef that you have a special power to be able to integrate the many colors of life into a rainbow. You're going to go into a society and you're going to see diversity. You're going to see so many different cultures and civilizations and types of worship and religions and philosophies, and so many of them alien to everything you knew. But instead of allowing diversity to confuse you and destroy your moral soul and moral character, you were gifted with a special gift, a multi-colorful tunic where you will be able to take all the colors of humanity and weave them together into a beautiful spiritual mosaic and tapestry that reveals the oneness of God manifested through the rainbows of society. That ability to enter into a place of diversity and yet not allow it to destroy your character, but allow you to integrate it all, that's a special gift. Yosef had it, that's why he was given this tunic. The brothers didn't have it. This is what irked them so deeply. When Yosef gives this type thing to Binyamin, he doesn't give him 1 garment, he gives him 5 garments. Because Mordechai will now be a royal prime minister in the Persian Empire. And yet the ability for Mordechai not only not to lose his identity, but on the contrary, to bring in the presence of morality, holiness, spirituality, and God in the Persian palace. For this you need a special gift. So he gives them 5 different types of clothing that Mordechai wears, all wears, similar to that ksainas pasam. And now at last, the brothers will not be jealous anymore. Because at last the brothers will understand what Yaakov was thinking and what Yosef was thinking. This was not about giving Yosef a gift to put down the other brothers. This was about giving Yosef a gift to be able to empower him with the mission that God chose for him. Every soul has their mission. The brothers had to be shepherds and Yosef had to be in Egypt. And every person gets the exact koiches that they need to be able to fulfill their mission. When Yosef now gives Binyamin this gift, Remez Ramazloi, there was a big hint there. This is from Mordechai. Mordechai is going to replicate me, who also got a ksainas pasam. At last, the brothers can see the bigger picture. They could see the whole picture, why he gave him the ksainas pasam. Now when they came to Egypt and they saw who Yosef is and what he has done, and how throughout all of these years, not only was he not depressed and broken, but he always saw himself as an ambassador of the divine. Ooh, this is what Yaakov saw. This is why Yosef was dreaming that we're going to bow down to him. This is what Yosef saw, that the sun and the moon and the 11 stars and all of the sheaves are going to prostrate themselves to him. At last, there can be acceptance, reconciliation, and the jealousy could be gone. All jealousy is ignorance. Envy equals ignorance. All envy is ignorance. This is what you learn in life. The people we're jealous of, it's basic ignorance. There was ignorance. And whenever there's awareness and enlightenment, the jealousy dissipates. All jealousy comes from the fact that you're locked up in your confined orbit and you don't see a larger truth. When he gives this gift to Binyamin because of Mordechai, understanding the symbolism behind the gift in the Ksainas Pasim, the jealousy can wane. This is perhaps one way of understanding this Gemarah. Zog the Gemarah weiter. There is also a beautiful interpretation of the Chassam Sofer. I would like to show it to you. I'm just going to open it here on my laptop. I'm just going to open it. If you may, those who are on Zoom, if you may not see me for a moment, but I wanted to share this interpretation with you from the Chassam Sofer. Where are we? I wrote it down many years ago, and I think I put it into my Vayigash file, and I reminded myself of it. Let's see, some Sofer, Chamesh Chalifos. Yeah, okay. I saw this in a sefer called Shvilei Pinchas, an essay Shvilei Pinchas by Reb Pinchas Hakoyen Friedman, famous Belzer Chassid who gives out different essays on the Parsha, and this is why I saw it. So the Shvilei Pinchas explains, this is another dimension in explaining this story, and I'll say it briefly. The Gemarah should ask another question. What's the other question the Gemarah should ask? You remember when the Shvatim came down to Egypt and they brought Binyamin? What happens? They came to his house, he made a meal for them, and it says he gave them all gifts. He gave all of them gifts, but Binyamin's gift was greater than all the other gifts. Vateirav Masas Binyamin Masas Kulam Chamesh Yadas, 5 times the amount. In other words, he gave Binyamin gifts 5 times the amount. Why doesn't the Gemarah ask about that? Why does the Gemarah ask now? When they were leaving back to Canaan. When they came here with Binyamin, he also set Binyamin apart. Very interesting. Why not? Now later it says they drank and they got drunk. Vayishkiru. And Rashi says from the day they sold him, they did not drink and he did not drink. This day, they didn't know he was the prime minister, but this day they drank wine. So for 22 years, nobody was drinking. 22 years. Now, we understand why the Shvatim drank wine at the meal. Because since the prime minister gives them wine, they couldn't refuse. It's the last thing you do. They were scared of him. They saw what he can do. But why was he drinking? True, he was happy that Binyamin was there. But Vayishkiru imay, they all got intoxicated, especially when he knew that his father is still in mourning. Why did Yosef drink wine? His brothers had to drink, but what forced Yosef to drink? So very briefly, he explains as follows. The Arizal talks about the fact that the Chazal speak about 4 exiles. There was the Babylonian exile, the Persian exile, the Greek exile, and the Roman exile. 4 exiles in Jewish history. And the Arizal says that the Babylonian exile is connected to the Yud of Hashem's name, Persian exile, Hey, Greek exile, Vav, and Roman exile, Hey. Egyptian exile encompassed all of them. all of the four exiles. In Kabbalah, it's called Koitzei Shel Yud. There's a little line on top of the Yud that's even beyond Yud Kei Vav Kei, because the Egyptian exile encompassed all of the subsequent exiles in the Jewish people. And the famous Chidah says, Ve'ele Shmois B'nei Yisrael HaBoyim Mitzrayma. Boyim is an acronym, Bavel, Madai, Yavon, Edom. Boyim is Bavel, Edom, Yavon, Madai, because when they came to Egypt, this was the genesis of all the four subsequent exiles. He says that's why it says that Hashem took us out from Egypt. There's four languages, Hitzesi, Itzalti, Ga'alti, Velakakti, which parallel the 4 cups of wine. That's why we drink 4 cups of wine by the Seder. It's also connected to these 4 experiences. He's not only taking us out of Egypt, but he'll take us out from Babylonia and Persian and Greek and ultimately the Roman and final exile after the destruction of the second Beis Hamikdash. Now, we see that the Shvatim went down to Egypt 4 times, and they also went away 4 times. They left Egypt 4 times, right? The first time, they went down to get food, and then they went back to Eretz Yisrael to bring back Binyamin. The second time, they came down with Binyamin, and then they went back after Yosef revealed himself. The third time, they came down to Mitzrayim with Yaakov, and they went back to bury him in Maris Machpelah, and then they came back to Egypt a 4th time, and by the exodus of Egypt, finally the Jewish people went out again. In other words, they went down to Mitzrayim 4 times, and they left Mitzrayim 4 times. So there's a famous word, this comes from, I think, the Belzer Ruv, Rabbi Yisachar Doiv of Belzer. He says because they were preparing for the 4 exiles and the exodus from the 4 exiles. So they went down 4 times, and they left 4 times. So therefore, Yosef wanted they should go home and come back with Binyamin. That's the second time they come down to Egypt, which is parallel to the second exile, which is the Persian exile. And leaving Mitzrayim with Binyamin is like the exodus from the Persian exile. Okay. Since they were saved from the Persian exile through Mordechai, Mordechai came from Binyamin. So therefore Yosef had them the second time come down with Binyamin, because the second exile and its salvation happened through Binyamin, through Mordechai, who came from Binyamin. Maisa of a Simon Labanim, when Binyamin comes down to Egypt, that's the second time. This is the Persian exile, where they're going into Achashverosh's exile, and Mordechai will become the prime minister who will ultimately liberate them, and he is a descendant of Binyamin. So when Yosef gives Binyamin the 5 garments, and he says, one day there will be a child, comes from you, who will liberate the Jewish people from the Persian exile, this is the preparation for Purim at that moment, because now they're leaving Egypt for the second time, which parallels the redemption of the second exile. That's why there's the remez happening right here when he gives it to Binyamin. Since the second time they come down, it has to do with the Persian exile. That's why the Shvatim were drinking, because Purim is Chayiv Inish L'Psuma B'Puria Adala Yada Ben Arar Haman L'Baruch Mordechai. This is Purim, and this was the preparation for Purim, which is the second Geula. This is the second time they came into Egypt, and they're leaving Egypt. So therefore, subconsciously, there was already the beginning of Purim. That's why they're drinking Adal Yada. This is the suggestion that the Shvili Pinchas makes based on the Hasidic masters. Why was it important for Yosef to do it? So he says, because the Medrash says that Haman and the king sat down to drink. And when they sat down to drink after they made the decree of the Jewish people, God was telling the Shvatim, when you sold your brother, you sat down to eat and drink. And therefore now the king and Haman are sitting down to drink after they sold the Jewish people to be destroyed. Yeah. So till the days of Mordechai, the sin of selling Yosef still lingered. So that's why the Chidah says the miracle of Purim happened through Mordechai and Esther, because they came from Shevet Binyamin. Binyamin was the only one who was not involved in selling Yosef. So therefore the sale of Yosef caused the decree of Haman, and therefore Mordechai and Esther had to nullify it because they were not part of the sale of Yosef, because they were from Shevet Binyamin, and Binyamin wasn't there when they sold Yosef. Only the other brothers were there when they sold Yosef. So therefore, Esther told Mordechai, gather all the Jewish people, and on Purim we do Mishloach Manas Ish L'Re'eu, because we have to accentuate Jewish unity. which is the tikkun for the strife between Yosef and his brothers. Now, according to all of this, we'll understand why Yosef gave Binyamin more gifts than the other brothers, and the Gemarah is not bothered by that. And the reason is because tshuva always happens when you're in the same position, but you do it differently. Yosef, before reconciling with his brothers, he had to make sure that the issue was fixed, the jealousy was fixed. How? So he set up a similar situation where Binyamin would receive more than the other brothers, and he would see how they would respond. The Sefarno says this. And what did he see? He saw that they were ready to sacrifice their life for him. Yehuda was ready to become a slave so that Binyamin shouldn't be a slave, because he didn't want Yaakov to lose Binyamin. And that's where Yosef saw. He almost triggered the same jealousy. Tshuva is always the same spot, the same situation, etc. And nonetheless, they changed their attitude. This is where Yosef saw there was a transformation. That's why the Gemarah doesn't ask from the previous story, because in the previous story, Yosef had to give Binyamin extra. This is the only way that he would know that he did tshuva. The question of the Gemarah is only later, when they already knew he's Yosef and he still treated Binyamin differently. That's why the Gemarah asks a question. Now, why did the Shvata make a promise not to drink wine? Because there was a reason for it. And the reason is because they had to fix their own issues, their own jealousy. And that's why they had a promise not to drink wine, not to be intoxicated. When Yosef gave Binyamin extra gifts and he saw they were not jealous, so Yosef realized that they fixed the mistake, and therefore Yosef could start drinking. In other words, the reason they were not drinking was, it was like a nazir. It says when somebody sees sin, he segregates from wine. He doesn't want to become inebriated. They needed to work on their kina, on their jealousy. When he saw that their jealousy was fixed, so not only they drunk wine, he was drinking wine. So now he had them bring Binyamin down. This is like Mordechai, who's going to liberate the Jewish people from the second exile. That's why here he tests them if they already fixed their jealousy by giving Binyamin extra. And this would be the preparation for what happens during the Persian Empire, where even though they're scattered, they would still come together. And that's why you have the mitzvah of Mishloach Manas, Leich Knaises Kala Yehudim. And because of that, Mordechai, who was not involved in the sale, would come out with the Levushe Malchus and ultimately liberate the Jewish people from the second exile. This is another possible interpretation of how to understand this entire idea. So Yosef prepares Binyamin with these levushim as the geula of Madai, but only after he saw that the jealousy was fixed up. So this is a more mystical, homiletical interpretation for the whole issue. Let me conclude with one final insight that I saw. Another question. Why doesn't the Gemarah speak about the fact that Binyamin got 300 coins of silver? It says, Shloish Me'askei, he only give him clothes. The Gemarah ignores that. Why doesn't the Gemarah ask about that? It only asks about the clothes and explains about the clothes. But what about the money? What about the money? That's another question that's very important to ask. So I'm going to tell you a beautiful vart that I saw. A beautiful, beautiful vart that I saw. I also wrote it down here, and I'm going to tell you the vart. Why the Gemarah doesn't ask about that? Let me open it up. If Yosef gave Binyamin 300 pieces of silver, he didn't give none to the other brothers, would that not cause jealousy? And the Gemarah doesn't answer that. The Gemarah just answers about the clothes. So the Chassam Sofer answers the question based on a Gemarah in Gittin. The Gemarah says in Gittin, Daf Mem Daled, Rabbi Shua ben Levi said, one who sells his slaves to an idolater, we penalize him and we force him to buy him back for up to 10 times the value of the slave. So I sold a slave, an Evet Knaini, to an idolater. Halachically, pay him back, buy him back, and not only for the same price. You don't just give back the money, up to 10 times the value of the slave. An ordinary slave was worth 30 silver coins. As we know from the halach in the Torah that if an ox gores and kills a slave, the owner has to pay the master 30 silver coins. Shloishim shkalim kesef. Accordingly, the brothers who sold Yosef should have been obligated to pay the penalty of 10 times Yosef's value in order to redeem him. So since they didn't redeem him, he became a slave. They therefore owed Yosef 300 silver coins, because how many brothers were involved in the sale? There were 12 brothers. Yosef was the victim, he was sold. Binyamin was not present. So there were 10 brothers who were involved. 10 times 30 is 300. So they owed Yosef 300 silver coins, because everyone was responsible to redeem him up to 10 times. Or at least all the 10 were responsible because they did it together. So up to 10 times 30 would be 300. So the brothers owed him 300. So this is why Yosef didn't give them the 300 silver coins that he gave to Binyamin. Binyamin was not involved in the selling, so he rightfully deserved this amount. And therefore Yosef was not concerned that this would be a cause for jealousy. Why wouldn't it be a cause for jealousy? Because they're chayiv. They're chayiv in this chum. They're chayiv. They owe it to him. So if they owe it to him, even if he gives it to them, they have to give it back. They have to give it back. But Binyamin, he can give it to. This is from the Chassam Sofer. The Imrei Emes said that Yosef was not at the wedding of Binyamin. Right? Binyamin had a son. He named him Chupim because he said Yosef was not at my chuppah and I wasn't at his chuppah. So now he gave him the money as a drasha geshank, as a gift for the wedding. This is another homiletical interpretation why the Gemarah does not address the money that he gave Binyamin. Apparently this money was a special relationship between Yosef and Binyamin. He wanted to give him a special gift to his brother for his chasana, or the first interpretation that it's because of the Dmei Avdus, because of the money. I'll also tell you, I saw that the Mesivta Gemarah says, the Marsha says, he brings from the Marsha, why are we not concerned about the money? Right? So he says as follows. The Marsha says that he's his brother. He wants to give him extra. But when he gives shirts, everybody sees it because it's clothes. So they would think he's trying to show that he hates them. That's why the Gemarah is perturbed by it. But in terms of money, money could be a quiet thing. Nobody ever saw it. So because nobody would see it, they wouldn't suspect that it's becoming because of the hatreds of the brothers. On the contrary, even if somebody would know, they would understand because he's closer to Binyamin, because he's a full brother. That's the Marsha's answer. Another answer is that the Gemarah is not worried about the money because the strife between the brothers and Yosef happened because of the clothes, the Ksainas Pasim. So that's where we're concerned that he shouldn't repeat the same mistake. When it comes to money, money was not the issue. So therefore they weren't about money, it was about the shirt. So that's why they were not concerned that this is going to create jealousy. And another Mefaider says that he didn't give the money in front of them. Then we have the explanation about the slavery. And at last, the Medrash Lekach Tov says that the 300 silver coins was also connected to Mordechai. It was also a hint for Mordechai. Why? Because the gematria of Mordechai is 274. Okay? If you add the one more because of his name, it's called the Kailel, it's 275. Because gematria, we count every letter separately, but we often count also the sum total of the word, Mordechai, so it's 275. Now add the letters of his fathers, because the Megillah identifies him as Mordechai ben Yair ben Shimi ben Kish ish Yemini. So if you add the letters of his fathers, Yair and Shimi and Kish, Yemini, you have 300. And that's the Shlosh Meyes Kesef. That's just another hint why he gave him the 300 coins of silver. There's another very interesting interpretation I saw in the Iyun Yaakov. And that is, Yosef embarrassed Binyamin publicly. He claimed, or his servant claimed, that Binyamin stole the goblet. He stole the silver goblet. And there's something called Dmei Boishas. When you shame somebody, you have to pay. So that's why he gave him money as a compensation for the humiliation that he caused him. So there's no reason to be jealous. But when he gave him extra clothes, this would be a reason for jealousy. So these are different possible interpretations of how to understand this Gemarah. I wish you all a beautiful day, a beautiful, beautiful Shabbos, Hatzlacha and everything. Stay healthy. I love you all. I bless you all. May we have a refuah shleima and a refuah kroiva for all who need it, and for all the Jewish people and for the whole world, and be zoicha to the gula shleima. B'mheira b'yameinu amen. Alichtike Shabbos, afreiliche Shabbos. Have a beautiful, beautiful day.
This class is brought to you by theyeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.